At Indreland Angus, they've been challenging their bulls for generations to make sure that they are durable and fertile.
At the end of the day, we're getting, I think, bulls that are durable, athletic, and have enough fertility to breed a lot of cows. And I think that's one of our end goals. And then coming out of a cow that lives on forage, knows how to rustle for a living during the winter, and is not afraid to go up and down in body condition depending on, and still put reproduction at a pretty high level.
But they're also doing some very interesting things in other ways to make sure that their bulls are good to deal with and handle.
Works with them and loads them in a trailer, horseback and on foot. And then he gives them a sensitivity score just to give an indication of how much pressure it takes for the bull to respond. But I think the biggest thing about that is doing that at a time when you're not needing to get a bull out or get him hauled or whatever, when your objective is really to let that bull know that the trailer's not a bad place to be. And they'll get in and they'll let them set for 10, 15 minutes, and then they'll walk out, and you cycle through them enough times until he's got a good sense on all of them.
All that and more on this episode 473 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by PowerFlex.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Conry, host of the Working Cows podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag studios. We're very excited to be joined once again by Roger and Betsy Indreland. They are from Indreland Angus near Big Timber, Montana, and they've got a bull sale coming up in a couple of weeks on December 8th, and just wanted to let you know about that and talk to them about what they've been doing to try to set their bulls apart in the marketplace from a durability and fertility standpoint, but also from a docility and handling and your ability to handle them. And they've got some interesting things that they're doing there. So excited for this conversation with them, and we'll share that conversation with you right after a word from our sponsor today, PowerFlex Supply. And I just want to ask you a question. Have you thought about including PowerFlex Supply in your Black Friday shopping? PowerFlex Supply is far from another big box store. They're staffed by expert ranchers who use everything they sell in their own pastures. Those same experts enable PowerFlex Supply to offer the Rancher Success Program, a free service that will help you develop your grazing infrastructure plan down to the specific products you need for your livestock species, region, style of grazing, and budget. For 25 years, PowerFlex Supply has been guided by one rule. If their employees won't use a product on their own pastures, they won't sell it to you. That means the permanent and portable electric fencing, livestock water systems, and rotational grazing supplies they do stock have been hand-selected to be the best you can get. PowerFlex Supply is a leading North American distributor of Gallagher, O'Brien's, Speedrite, Strainrite, and many more. And if they couldn't find an existing product, PowerFlex Supply makes it themselves, including their legendary Super 9 Polybraid and rugged spinning Jenny. Visit powerflexsupply.com to get started. Roger and Betsy, thanks for joining me again on the Working Cows podcast. Welcome back.
No, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Been quite a while since we had you on. Last time had the opportunity to talk to you about the soil health journey that you guys have been on there at your ranch, and people can find links to that in the show notes page for today if they want to go back and listen to it. And really, even listening to it again this morning as I was getting ready to talk to you guys again, I was challenged by some things in there, thinking, hey, we should apply some of these things to our place, because what you guys have been through from a soil health perspective is a lot like our place. And I think there's some things we could do to kickstart some of what we're trying to get done. But all that aside, I'd like to talk to you today about the genetics journey that you've been on, because we touched on it there in the course of that episode, where we talked a little bit about you moving the calving date and some of those things. I'm assuming that the calving date move was primarily about profitability. Is that right?
Oh, yes, that is correct. Being able to kind of try to get the the winter costs out and match the third trimester, and then the breed back with better nutrition in the cow, kind of matching our forage cycle with our breeding cycle.
Right. And do you feel like there have been genetic benefits that have sprung out of that as well? Kind of maybe an unintended consequence of these cows are just more fit to the environment now and some of those things?
Yeah, I think there is. We would have had a handful of cows that were probably higher in milk production than they should have been. That wasn't given our feeding regime was never really expressed to any great degree. But calving on green grass in May, we've had just a few. There was a few of those cows that udder structure and those kind of things. It certainly has cleaned that up, and I think that might be the main thing. There also the calving change has probably there was fallout. I think cows have a biological clock, an internal biological clock, and anytime any kind of a change, there's an adjustment for them to go through.
Yeah, what would you say has been the biggest or maybe the target you've been shooting at genetically? What have been some of the things that you've been pursuing?
For us, I think our major big picture kind of 60,000 foot goal is to try to mimic natural systems, and so that's where we're calving pretty close to when deer and antelope and elk are having their little ones. But I think the other side of that is a little bit trying to mimic. We put multiple herd sires out with groups of cows, or with our cows, and multi-sires in the pasture, pretty competitive breeding environment. And then, when we do the DNA to verify parentage, I think that really allows us insights into which bulls are really efficient and which bulls can breed a lot of cows. And I think there's more to it than just how many can they breed. It's how long can they survive doing that? What's their longevity like when they're breeding, 50 to 75 cows a year. And it also sorts out the ones that aren't performing up to par, but it makes you kind of wonder if there's some pretty dominant bulls in there if they had a chance. And it's like everything in natural systems. The more you figure out, the more questions there are. Because the next question for me is, well, is that bull, is it all because of how he acts, or does he just have a little higher quality, or his sperm cells just a little faster swimming? So there's a lot. Then it's like, well, I don't know how we sort that out. At the end of the day, we're getting, I think, bulls that are durable, athletic, and have enough fertility to breed a lot of cows. And I think that's one of our end goals. And then coming out of a cow that lives on forage and knows how to rustle for a living during the winter and is not afraid to go up and down in body condition depending on, and still put reproduction at a pretty high level of importance.
We talk a lot about challenging heifers, I think. Do you think that there's something to that idea of challenging bulls too, and trying to, find those bulls that are more, more driven, or however you would say that?
I think there is. I mean, it just stands to reason to me that being the bull that's dominant in a group of deer or elk or any dominant animal is going to have more influence. And I think dominant and smart. I think there's components to that we probably don't even realize because we just don't live out there like they do, but just survivability, taking care of yourself and being able to be wise about how you're moving through a group of livestock or how you're navigating steep hills and rough country and mud holes. And, I just think there's so many things that I absolutely believe it would be a big contributor.
Is most of your ground over a mile in elevation? Is that right? Or you got some?
Yeah. Our winter ground, a lot of it is 4,500, and then our summer ground, a lot of that is 6,500, or around 6 anyway. So yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
what does it look like? Or maybe walk me through that bull's life cycle and kind of maybe how they're developed differently on your ranch that kind of contributes to them being a little hardier and longer lasting and some of those things.
Yeah, I think, they're born unassisted. They get on pasture. They get they get exposed to a person right away because we ear tag them and get DNA sample. And I kind of wish we didn't have to do that in a way, but given our business, that is what we need to do. But then they're in a kind of a competitive grazing situation throughout their life, so the animal concentration is higher than set stock grazing for sure. They're going to go first born in May and early June. The one thing that those calves have never had is really haven't been exposed to winter storms or anything. So we leave them with their mother till after the first of the year.
Bulls and heifers.
Yes. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And we do occasionally see a whole bunch of bull calves chasing a dry cow, and we haven't had too much of an issue with getting yearling heifers bred or heifer calf bred. But anyway, then we'll wean them around the end of January, and fence line wean. Then a couple weeks after that, once they're solidly weaned, we'll split the bull calves and heifer calves, and at that point, they'll go on to depending on the weather, but they're going to get. Normally, by that point in time in the winter, they've been exposed to several pretty good winter storms, at least cold snaps, even if it's not with a lot of snow. And I think they learn a little bit about life from their mother in that situation. And as a young cat, as a calf, I think the heifers are learning how to winter graze a little bit and start to kind of be forced to do that, but they still have the mom's advice, but they also find that mom's not really providing near as much milk as she was because we went into winter conditions and the quality of the feed went down. And we will supplement a little protein depending on how dried out it gets. And we have quite a bit of crested wheat and brome grass stubble that's pretty darn low in the nutrition. So in certain cases, we'll certainly supplement some protein hay a little bit. And then, but anyway, they get weaned and they're basically back to, at that point, we do feed those calves the protein they need with a high protein hay.
They're still on pasture
normally, but yes, they're still on pasture. So they're going to continue to graze through the winter, depending on, and we'll supplement them with, sometimes it might be some cake, and we've also used a couple pounds of whole corn as an energy component, just fed on the ground. But it's primarily a combination of grazing for their energy component and high protein hay for their protein component. So they'll come until we get to green grass, which in our stockpile feed, we'll have green grass early April to middle of April that they'll start. So they really only kind of need that high protein supplementation February, March, part of April, depending on. But we may overlap on that for a month, so we may really at that point they get semen tested. And we basically.
So this would be they're just short of a year old, right?
Yeah, just short of or a year old.
Mm-hmm.
And we semen test those because we have quite a demand for these bulls to breed heifers as yearlings, as a lease bull. So we lease those bulls out, and those that pass the semen test, they're eligible to be leased. And at that point, we'll have about 70 to 80% of the bulls will pass their semen test at 11 to 12 months old. Yeah, probably closer to 80, actually. But anyway, so then they'll likely go somewhere and breed heifers. They'll come back, and we have a quarantine. Once they come back here, we have a 3-week quarantine, and then they're a rigorous testing protocol that they have to come back negative on everything.
Trick and other things like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Trick, brucellosis,
Anaplasmosis,
leukosis, and iones.
Yeah. So they're tested for all those things. Our veterinarian felt that was a pretty good deal, or pretty good testing panel to do. And then the quarantine period would take care of, should take care of anything else that we would see. So no nose-to-nose contact with any resident animals. So we do quite a bit of polywire, keeping that as well as a buffer in between. And then they'll join the bulls that didn't go anywhere necessarily when they, and then they'll get semen. The whole group will get semen tested again, and that's where we'll pick our bulls for our fall sale.
But they get rotationally grazed. The ones that are here, and then when the other ones rejoin as well.
That's right. Yeah. And so, when we first started leasing bulls, we were a little nervous about, because there's a connotation with virgin bulls. I had a good, thorough discussion with our veterinarian, and she felt that the testing that we were doing could overcome that. And we've seen in our sale that we've actually, some people say, well, I'm glad to know they know how to survive a summer breeding. They got through a summer breeding uninjured and come back healthy enough to be back in the sale, or, anyway. So, but that's really, I think they've learned a lot about grazing at that point, and learned a lot about working too.
So in your typical sale, there will be some virgin 18-month-old bulls and some that have been out and had a breeding season under the belt. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
And how long have you been doing the lease program?
I guess about 5-6 years now. Yep.
And what difference have you seen? I mean, have you been able to kind of track a difference probably over time of these virgin bulls versus the lease bulls? Is there anything that stands out there or not?
Surprisingly, it doesn't seem to be too much. Our fear that they wouldn't be accepted that went away right away, because it seemed like the lease bulls average just as good or high as non-lease bulls in our sale, and it is denoted. So it's complete transparency. The bulls that have been leased, it says they've been leased, and I mean, if somebody wanted to know, we could tell them where they were, type of deal. But between the quarantine period and I think that little bit of time when they come back, and that quarantine period, they're on good feed. It would be a challenge to actually go out in a group just ahead of our sale and say that bull was leased, that one hasn't, from a visual. So I think our slower overall development program, the growth isn't like, we're not pushing them. So the differences aren't as major, where it's not readily evident that, boy, that was a lease bull when they show it. I think that sorts itself out a little bit in the semen test, because we've certainly had bulls that went somewhere into a drought area and bred heifers in big country, and might have been exposed to a lot of cycling heifers, at a ratio where maybe the people weren't trying to get every heifer bred. They just want bulls out there. Well, there can be a lot of work to do for them young bulls. And occasionally there'll be some bulls that show up coming back that it's obvious they've really, really worked. And when we semen test, we've had it where, their scrotal has actually shrunk from what it was when we took them. And so they're not going to pass just on the scrotal. Their semen's still good, but they're not going to pass on the scrotal. And we don't want to sell anything that doesn't pass the complete test. So, those bulls will get held over until they've had a little better chance to recover. And especially if they were to a late breeding program, it could have been hot and dry, and they might have been working pretty hard. And there'd be just I'd say 10 to 15% maybe that kind of hits that mark, is like, man, we're behind. And I think that really is not in the condition or the frame or anything that shows up so much as it is the semen testing, which we see in the scrotal measurement.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the scrotal measurement comes down to basically capacity for a breeding season, right? That's my understanding, anyways.
It is mine too, Clay. And I know that I think those measurements were kind of designed and built. The standards might have been built with a little bit more of the fed up bull in mind. So I think that capacity and there's got to be some validity to the scrotal measurement to breeding capacity, in my mind. But semen quality, I think, also is a huge component. I mean, and there are breeds, I think Longhorns and Brahman cattle are both known for smaller scrotals, but you wouldn't want a bunch of them in with your heifers if you don't want them bred. So, I don't know what's right or wrong, but we're still going to conform to the standards of what our veterinarian recommends.
Yeah, and I think that scrotal, on those fed up bulls or the bulls that are developed a little faster, tends to be they probably need a bigger scrotum because the fat deposits or whatever in the scrotum take some of the place of where the semen would be in a bull that's developed slower. Again, according to my understanding.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Range Ward. Range Ward builds all-in-one solar-powered electric fencing machines for the serious grazer. Their units feature powered reels, built-in solar chargers, and step-in post storage, saving you labor costs, increasing your profitability, and enabling you to spend your time on other projects. Range Ward's time-saving machines can be found on hundreds of thousands of acres across Canadian and U.S. pastures, ranging from small hobby or homestead farms to massively privately owned and corporately run pastures and grazing co-ops. Every unit is designed from the ground up to include feedback from working producers and is built in Range Ward's advanced manufacturing facilities in the U.S. and Canada. Range Ward offers a full lineup of fencing solutions, from the Power Grazer, capable of handling 30 miles of fencing, to the all-new Power Reel, delivering Range Ward quality and efficiency in a lower-cost package that will mount to an ATV or side-by-side. To learn more, visit rangeward.com. Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned early on there is the cows are experiencing that kind of wave in body condition score, and that's something that you are okay with, and maybe even hoping that they're going to do well with that. So can you talk about the advantage of that? And I think that there are some people that would say even you want them to get down to a certain lower body condition score at different points of the year, and that's part of them cycling better and some of those things. Does that match with your experience?
It does. Yeah, and I think they're economically, it allows us in the fall and winter we're only in the first and second, early part of the second trimester while the calves are still on, and it allows us to not worry a terrible amount if we slip a half a body condition or a body condition in January December, January, and February, because as soon as we hit green feed and good stockpile feed, is starting to grow some green feed in March and April. Very little in March, but it's certainly evident in April. Those cows are starting to pick up. Yeah, they're gonna be able to carry forward and do that, and then cycle. And I think that's our mindset is basically that we want to challenge our cattle to a degree that when they go someplace else, they're going to think that they've hit the jackpot. And we don't want to be mean to them, or we don't want to, but I just think in general, keeping them challenged at some level, and trying to, as Bert Teicher would say, supplement them and take the rough edges off of Mother Nature, and providing the right amount at the right time is kind of how we think of that, just to help them along. And the other thing with body condition going up and down, and I've certainly read about, there's organ fat on an animal that's used for, at least in wildlife, if we're trying to mimic natural systems, they talk about the organ fat would be something a deer would use if they're being attacked by a mountain lion or something. And that's red energy they can use instantly. Intramuscular fat is something that they can use for a pretty big storm. And then the body condition that we see, the external fat is something that they're going to use seasonally. But for a cow to thrive, as long as she can put that organ fat and that intramuscular fat back on pretty quickly, she's going to survive in that system, dealing with weather probably better and, physical challenges than a cow that's just got everything in front of her all the time. And that if there's a propensity to marble there, which our ultrasound, I'm pretty sure indicates that we have a pretty high propensity to marble in these cattle. And that, to me, that's good because it translates to eating satisfaction. And I don't think that matters if it's corn finished or grass finished. I think good amount of intramuscular fat is really a positive thing. And I think genetically it connects really good with the production system of the cow herd.
Sure. Yeah, Betsy, what are you thinking? What are some of the kind of thoughts you've had as part of this discussion?
Well, I know switching from winter calving to May calving was a pretty big deal for us, and we've often talked that if we had to go back, we probably wouldn't own cows. But it just seems to, just working with natural systems, especially with the cattle, it just seems to make more sense and reduce a large amount of stress on the animals as well as the people component of it. Just calving now on green grass, just going out, and we're not really calving, the cows are, and we're just tagging and taking birth weights and getting a DNA sample for parentage. So I think it's just really increased our quality of life quite a bit, doing things different and more in sync with nature.
Sure. What have been some of the things you've noticed over the years from the parentage testing? And I mean, you talked about some of those bulls that are getting more bred than their counterparts. What are some of the things that have kind of stood out to you over the years from that?
Well, there's been a couple that that haven't bred near as many, and then you got to say, well, why is he just not getting things bred, or was he in with the one bull that was kind of first on the scene? I think, and that's been the case a few times. But it is really interesting to look at that and to see how many different ones have gotten bred and different lineages, and it is amazing how accurate they are, because like we'll have a couple different groups, certain bulls with different groups, and I'll run the DNA against the whole group, and then I'll go back and check, well, is that possible? Could that bull have bred that cow? And all of them line up. And then, of course, a neighbor bull gets in once in a while, and they were able, because that bull had been in the database as well, they were able to identify that particular bull and who was it. And sure enough, it's our neighbor that owns that bull. So it's just amazing how accurate that database is and how they can do that. So I have total confidence in what they're saying.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting.
For sure.
And
So, yeah, go ahead, Roger.
well, I guess it's kind of interesting, because I mean, when we were turning out bulls with small groups and doing some AI and stuff, line breeding or inbreeding at some level was kind of part of our program. But it is amazing too how much accidental line breeding we're still doing with the multi-sire, multiple bulls being turned out. It just shows up, and it makes you wonder how much we just don't know, and the benefits of that, giving them that opportunity, I think it always just makes me ask a lot more questions on than we have answers. But I just know that one of the things we're seeing is incrementally our cows look more alike, have the same kind of profile, phenotypical things, the consistency and the uniformity that we're seeing. And it really becomes apparent in our older bulls, or, as they get older, the masculinity is very apparent.
Yeah. We've talked quite a bit about the bull side of the equation. Let's talk a little bit about the cow side of the equation. Talk to me about the cow herd and kind of maybe some of the metrics there, size, weight, some of those things.
Yep. We our average cow weight, and that's we average. We take our weights when we do our 205-day weights. But we weigh the 2-year-olds, class them separately from the 3-year-olds as well. And then kind of a mature cow weight is 4 years and older. But our mature cow weight is 1,030. And that's in a body condition 4+, 4.4. At time we take 205-day weight, which is typically late October. So they've had a couple months of hot, dry weather and still keeping that cap on. But
and our vet does the body condition scoring.
Yeah,
crate checking.
Yeah, we do that while we're crate checking. That's a high 48 point. We just finished up our catalog, so I have that information. It's all in our catalog. 48.8 this year was
inches high,
inches tall,
hip height.
Yeah, and so a pretty darn moderate sized cow. On the other hand, I think every body condition score is worth at least 100 pounds. So if they were in body condition 5s, as probably most animal science or veterinarian would recommend, they'd be 1,130 pounds, would be where they'd hit. But I think that 100 pounds is just us putting a little bit of pressure on that keeps them honest, I guess, in my opinion. I think that's probably the major thing. Mothering ability, and I think those kind of things on pasture calving. Now, I think I think we're getting in the way more than we're doing good. The only thing we're doing good is for marketing, by tagging them calves and getting DNA
and a birth weight.
And a birth weight, and those are the reasons we need that, is because of marketing. I think that's leftover things. I just think it would be really hard to sell bulls that didn't have, heifer bulls especially, that didn't have a birth weight collected. We've toyed with the idea of not doing that and really staying out of the way and just doing DNA. We've been doing it long enough now, we could identify the sire and dam just to confirm that the pedigree is correct. So we have some leftover baggage that we could probably sort out someday, but I think we still got to fit in the market, because I don't think there's very many people I could ask to buy heifer bulls just because they're out of the heifer. I think they want to see that birth weight and birth weight EPD and those things. So, yeah.
And go ahead, Betsy, if you got some.
Oh, I was just going to say, we also collect or have our vet do foot scores on everything as a yearling, bulls and the heifers. So we've been collecting that data for several years and I think they all do pretty well on it. So we don't have any foot and leg issues in the cows or bulls.
Right. We foot score. We haven't called a yearling heifer or a yearling bull for a foot score. And we would if there was anything that fell out of 2 points either way from the ideal. Or if we saw any lameness issues from that, which is, it's just been hasn't been that long. They've had the foot scoring out there. And I thought it was kind of silly at first, but our veterinarian said, well, you should really probably do it. And I said, well, if you'll do it, I'll do it. Because I don't believe that I should evaluate our own cattle for traits like that. I think a independent third party is where that should be done, so that there's no questions about personal bias.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of where the cow herd is today. 1,030 at 205, or preg check day, I think, is also about the same time, and then maybe 1,130 pounds if they were up a frame score or up a body condition score. Where did they start? I think we talked a little bit about in the first episode that you guys did. Had your dad was kind of had a pretty moderate cow herd anyways, didn't maybe go after the bigger, faster, better type of cattle at when the whole industry went that way. But
Right.
what's kind of been that journey, and where'd you start?
You know, well, when Betsy and I first started, I mean, we've been in this business 48 years. And so, yeah, we did chase that bigger, faster, better deal for a while. The cows I started with would have been ideal. But I pretty well brought them up because I was chasing the fads for about 10 years. But, yeah, they'd have been up to 1,250 to 1,300 pounds pretty easily. And they would have been about where they are now, possibly, when I started. And then about 10 years, I probably had them up to closer to 1,300 pounds, and higher milk, considerably higher milk EPD, considerably more birth weight as we were. And then we had a year when things were pretty tight and feed was pretty tight, and breed up. It really was a sort on those cattle. So, and we'd AI'd to a couple bulls with quite a bit of difference in their EPDs and stuff, and moderate EPD, moderate frame bull. Those heifers came in. Their breed up was still way better and stayed in. At that point, we decided we've just, rather than try to compete in that world, we just need to do what works for us and take costs out of the equation. So, or at least leave ourselves that chance. But there was no chance with the high performance. Yeah,
That's about the same time we switched calving a little bit later, incrementally,
right.
to reduce the winter feed costs, and we realized that those smaller cattle were the ones that could do that better, save us some money.
Right. Yep.
And I think we would all agree there are easier places in the world to be a cow than Big Timber, Montana. That's
I think so. I think if we had more native range, but in a lot of our leased ground, it's not, and it is what it is. And I think if we have more native range, it's a pretty good place to be. I mean, it's called Sweetgrass County, Montana, for a reason, I think. But that is the native range. It's not the brome and the crested wheat type of stuff that we have, seems like too much of. So, but yeah, we do get wind, we get cold. We don't normally get a lot of snow. So it does allow us some opportunities to graze out, certainly better than some place that just gets 3 feet of snow and stays here running. But the wind opens things up and exposes the grass. So it gives them a chance to get to it. And on the irrigated forage that we stockpile, it is dense enough that they can graze down through that quite a ways. Once they get down under there, they can do through quite a bit of snow. But it's pretty easy to challenge them because what's out there is not it isn't the highest quality, but like they would be able to pick in a good native range.
Yeah. I just from a big picture perspective, maybe let's talk a little bit about the ideas of line breeding and then outcrosses and kind of the benefits of that for people who maybe are looking to bring in some other genetic pools to really get the benefits of that outcross. Can you talk to me a little bit about your understanding and perspective of those ideas?
Yeah, we've had some people that'll buy bulls, and the first few years that they use our bulls, they will they'll almost get a hybrid kick out of that because of our concentrated genetics, and they'll see that even a little bit in weaning weights. That tends to go away if they continue using our bulls for a length of time, and they've been picking their replacement heifers to be a little more moderate, probably means they're out of our bulls. But I'd say about the third generation that they'll start to see that come right. Their weaning weight will come back down. And from that point forward, they'll see their weaning weight continue a little bit of a downward trend for a little while. But that's at the same time, they're going to start to see their cow size start to come down as well. So not necessarily will they reduce cow size in the first generation, depending on, and it depends on the genetics of their existing cows. It seems to really be true if there's a little bit of a crossbred cow that, but on some straight Angus cows, it less likely to see that bump in almost like hybrid vigor. So yeah, but on crossbred cows for sure see that.
I think since we've been using our own bulls for, gosh, I don't know how long, really, quite a while.
Over 20 years.
Yep.
Yep.
And, once in a while we might introduce a different genetics, but it's the same philosophy. So yeah, so then they go somewhere else and they will get that hybrid vigor kick for a while. So
right, and we have seen that within our herd. Like we'll sample a bull through AI and for 2 or 3 days beginning of breeding season or something. Just because I don't know, we're not really set up to just AI a lot, and I like the idea of testing the herd bulls in a competitive breeding environment. But anyway, it's a way to sample to get some half brothers, and we'll see that pretty prevalent jump in growth, basically, and from hybrid vigor. And then we'll try to keep sons of that to use within the herd, as well as either that or buying a bull that seems to fit in pretty good from a numbers perspective, and then. But it's really a little difficult to find a lot of cattle that really probably fit the mold. There's just not a lot of cattle out there that have that lower or higher dollar energy that the Angus Association puts out, as well as a milk EPD that fits. Because if you increase size and milk, you're going to get a higher maintenance animal.
Is that dollar energy EPD one of your favorites, or is there one that you pay attention to quite a bit?
You know, the dollar energy is far and away the number I look at the most, that in a combination of that and milk. You know, and it's something that's in the whole mix of information that's put out by the Angus Association. That's one that they've had and published for a long, long time. And we have found that far and away that's a huge number for us trying to run a cow herd that you can take some cost out of. And it, when you compare it to the industry average, I think the difference is $40-some between the average of the Angus breed in our herd. 45, something like that. You've done some math on it.
It's 41.
Well, 41.
Like our bulls that are in our sale, their dollar energy is a plus 23, and the Angus breed average for non-parent bulls in the fall sire summary is minus 18. Those are actual dollars of cost savings. So the higher number is better. So that's like a difference of $40 per cow per year.
Right.
Which adds up.
It does add up. And it's, I mean, they do the percentiles. So our cow herd there wouldn't be a cow on this place that's not in the top 5% on a dollar energy. So we don't chase numbers, but because of the function of what we're asking these cows to do, that's where they've landed, I guess. That hasn't been our goal. It hasn't been a goal to get to the top 5% in any specific number, but that is where it's landed.
Just
it didn't fall out.
Back of the envelope math is $10,000 on 250 cows at $40 a head. So that becomes real money pretty quick. So
yep.
Right.
So do you guys have a favorite cow family that you've really that you just appreciate out of your herd that you've seen over the years?
We kind of do. I mean, we started with a cow family. They were mostly Wanata breeding, but and then we ended up with a bull that was key band bull was, and there's 2 or 3 daughters that came out of that mating back in the late late 70s and early 80s that just really seemed to be the kind of cow that really fit. And the cow side of that has stayed strong no matter what we bred them to. I mean, you can just count on them. And, for a fair while, actually, Betsy and I did a branded beef program as well. And the cattle that would actually hit that choice mark, and we're feeding them long hay and whole corn, the cattle we were finishing at that point. The cattle that wouldn't look finished, but that were still hitting choice, we're out of that line of cows. And that's it's key band is and that really won't show up in a lot of our pedigrees today, but it's back there because that was the first herd sires when we started keeping our own herd sires. That was the ones we were keeping. Yeah. And so it's that combination of that and the Wanata. And yeah, if you went back in the pedigrees, they'd be in 95% of them.
Yeah. And speaking of which, you guys have a sale coming up December 8th. There and just north of the ranch, is that right? Or just up the road from the ranch is where the physical location will be. Is that right?
It is, yeah. We displayed the bulls basically right here at the ranch, and then we've been coming over to our house. But this year we're going up the road to cafe just 8 miles north of us here, where we'll actually have the video sale
and lunch.
Yep. And so, yeah, I think Betsy's graduated it out of the house.
Nice work.
She's tired of sliding furniture outside, so we can have a sale. But I mean, to me that it really did fit in because we like to do what works, and if you're really, I don't want to build a sale barn just to use once.
We try to be
one day out of the year.
Low input all the way around.
Yeah, but and this year, I mean, we do have a good selection of bred females as well. We're selling choice out of our bred heifers up to 10 head, and we're selling 100 head, over 100 head of registered bred cows that are ours, straight out of our herd. And then we're also got 50 bred coming 3-year-olds from a Royal and Josie Melton over at Fourth Grove, and they've been using our bulls for 10 plus years. So those young cows are highly lined up with our genetics. Also have 120 bred heifers from the Coulter family ranch at Brissette that they leased bulls and put on a nice set of heifers that they had purchased and bred. So pretty good selection of females as well. So we're excited. The market is good, and we have 2 days of open house ahead of the sale, so that we've had a pretty good history. It seems like we're having a pretty good storm on our sales our sale day, and so we started doing a couple days of open house so that people can come look, and it's online. And so if it's really a nasty storm, we've had neighbors come look at the bulls ahead of time and go home, and they can bid on them that day and be just fine.
Yeah, very good. Well, and there'll be links to the website and everything in the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/473. If you're interested in that, you can go there, check it out ahead of time, and make your plans to be there on December 8th. Are there any particular bulls that you're excited about in the offering this year? I know you're excited about all of them, but
well, we are. There's a handful. There's a handful of standout bulls that phenotypically really kind of catch a person's eye, and I think that's people should just look at the videos and see what they think. And we also we have one thing we do is have We've got a neighbor who's been a student of Way Hibbert's, and he comes down through and teaches the bulls to load, works with them and loads them in a trailer, horseback and on foot. And then he gives them a sensitivity score just to give an indication so it is one more thing for a customer to either select for or against, but it does give them a little sense of how much pressure the bull or what kind of pressure it takes for the bull to respond. But I think the biggest thing about that is doing that at a time when you're not needing to get a bull out or get him hauled or whatever, when your objective is really to let that bull know that the trailer's not a bad place to be. And they'll get in and they'll let them set for 10, 15 minutes and then they'll walk out, and you cycle through them enough times until he's got a good sense on all of them. So he'll probably be doing a demonstration on that the 7th that afternoon, I think about 1 o'clock.
On Sunday.
And then 4 p.m. that evening at the cafe, we're going to have just a question and answer kind of conversation with Nicole Masters. So people can come listen to what, either with questions or to have a conversation or sort out a problem they've been thinking about or whatever. So, looking forward to that. And I think Nicole is such a resource from a soil health perspective and a, human health perspective and all those things. I really feel that, that's kind of an interesting and be a valuable thing to attend and try to be part of for anybody that can get to it. So yeah, and then there's chili on in the tent and then the warm stove, the Saturday and Sunday ahead of it, and as well as that Monday. But, yeah.
So the stockmanship portion demonstration and all that's all Sunday. Is that right? On the 7th?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Like about 1 o'clock probably.
Yep.
And then head over to the cafe for a Q&A with Cole Masters in the afternoon, evening, right?
That's correct.
Yep.
And there will be snacks and beverages available then. So
It sounds like a great weekend, in my opinion.
Yeah, come on over.
No, we're looking forward. We always look forward to it. Of course, we also have a component where we're like, well, I hope everything kind of goes well and the weather participates. But so far this fall, we've had a pretty open fall and things look good. But we've done the best we can with digital sales to basically do a workaround in case it is nasty weather. But yeah,
very good. Well, Roger, Betsy, I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Clay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Very good stuff there with Roger and Betsy. Really appreciate their perspective and the journey that they've been on to find those durable and fertile bulls and females, and the opportunity that you've got there December 8th to get your hands on some of those, some bulls, some females, and some females from operations that have been using their genetics for a long time. So take advantage of that opportunity if you're in the market. I think you'll be very pleased with what they have on offer there. Coming up next on the Working Cows podcast for Black Friday, we'll be talking to Steve Campbell. We're going to talk to Steve. Steve's going to be speaking at the Rogue Food Conference this year, next year actually, early next year in February, 6th and 7th, coming up in Rapid City, South Dakota. Tickets are on sale now. Code COWS30 gets you $30 off your ticket. So go to roguefoodconference.com and get your tickets there. Use the code COWS30 and you'll get some money off your tickets. But we're going to talk to Steve about how do we develop animals that work well in our environment and meet the demand of our end consumer, whether that's a feedlot or a grass finishing program, or we're selling directly to a consumer. How do we find those animals that will satisfy the demand of our end consumer? So look forward to sharing that with you. Coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.